Welcome to this video looking at interpreting industry analysis. So we're going to look at what interpreting industry analysis is, as well as highlighting some of both the growth and declining industries today. So there are two types of industries when we look at trying to interpret them for whether we enter them into a marketplace. The first is what we call an unattractive industry. And this is often characterized by low entry barriers, suppliers and buyers having strong positions, or high supplier power and high buyer power, strong threats from substitute products. So there are many other types of products on the market in the same essence, and intense rivalry among competitors. So it's a fairly standardized product, or there are lots of competitors in the industry. And you can see here that this is going to lead to a low profit potential, because if you're selling what everyone else is selling, what makes you different? So when we talk about some of the declining industries currently, we think about newspaper and print media publishing being a big change that's happened, with a lot of newspapers kind of going out of fashion a bit or switching to online media. Traditional retail, walking into shops, whether that be here in Tasmania, whether that be even in China. I was actually in Hong Kong a little while ago and went over to a place called Shenzhen, which is just over the Chinese border, which used to be a big mecca for shopping, essentially. All the wholesalers were there. And unfortunately, when I was there not that long ago, most of the place have got shuttered up because they're all shifting online. It's cheaper and easier to just warehouse goods than it is to actually open a shop front. Video rental and physical media, with the rise of Netflix and the demise of Blockbuster and Video Easy and all these places, I don't actually know where you can rent a DVD these days in Tasmania, particularly. I think there might be little vending machines, but definitely no big chain stores anymore. There's a number of free-to-air television and cable things that are in decline currently because people just aren't watching television. We've got Netflix, we've got Flex, we've got all sorts of Disney Plus and things like that, and people just aren't using it. Particularly with Tasmania and some of Australia's single-use plastic bag ban, the plastic bag and single-use manufacturers have almost gone out of fashion a little bit, and so there's a huge decline in massive swaths of industry. The other one actually is tobacco manufacturers. The demise of tobacco manufacturers has actually increased, and although some people, yes, are switching to vaping, the amount of tobacco in vapes compared to your old traditional cigarette is very, very minimal. There are a number of other industries that are at risk, so face-to-face travel agencies and ATM operators. When was the last time any of you booked a flight, let alone an individual flight, through a travel agent and not online? And then ATM operators. How many people go out and get cash every week? I know there are still some industries that use cash, but it is very, very rare in Australia these days, particularly in China. What about then we look at an attractive industry? So this often is characterized by a number of high entry barriers, so it's hard to get into the market. Suppliers and buyers have weak positions or low supplier and low buyer power, which means that you have the power. Your organization has control. Fewer threats from substitute products, whether you're niche or whether you're special in some way. And moderate rivalry among competitors, being that your product or service is appropriately positioned. So some examples here of attractive industries in 2023. The first being healthcare. We can see that with Australia's growing life expectancy, as well as the impact of COVID, we're in demand of healthcare professionals, and most particularly aged care professionals. Currently, we know our hospital nurses are working overtime to provide the best care possible for their patients. Also, with the on and off postponing of elective surgeries, healthcare workers are finding it difficult to manage these surgeries when they resume after their postponement. The top 3 healthcare jobs that are in demand for 22 and 23 include aged care, disability cares, registered nurses, and physiotherapists. The second then is education and training. So we know that it's one job industry that are always going to be in demand regardless of technological advances, because the way in which Australian younger generations learn is always evolving. The future job growth of the education and training industry across many of its specific careers is forecasted as strong heading into the next year. The top 3 specific education and training jobs that are in demand are primary school teachers, particularly maths and science, university lecturers and tutors, specifically in the international education sector, and childcare educators, particularly diploma qualified. The third then is construction. With the current and future demand for better infrastructure and the increased demand for housing, the construction industry requires plenty of specialized skilled people. Despite the few construction workers being replaced by machinery in the future, the level of demand for construction-based projects outweighs this fear currently. The 4 top specific construction jobs that are in demand are electricians, plumbers, construction managers, and concreters. The second last one here is professional, scientific, and technical industries. And this industry involves jobs around the corporate sector, so law firms, the scientific sector, and the IT sector. And it's particularly forecasted that in 2023, there'll be more job roles that will arise due to new technologies that become more accessible for Australia's population, including 3D printing, drone deliveries, AI, and the top 3 professional, scientific, and technological jobs that are in demand at the moment are things like software, application programmers, ICT managers, and ICT support technicians. The last then is travel and tourism. So the travel and tourism industry has been through many ups and downs over the past few years, and many people would say this industry is in decline. However, interestingly, in Australia, this isn't true. So due to the closure of our borders and the strict lockdowns, people are now even more eager to travel both domestically and internationally and experience hospitality service due to being restricted in the COVID-19 outbreak. With many travel and tourism jobs in high demand, there are many job opportunities available, particularly for school leavers, and many hospitality managerial roles available for those coming to university. The top 4 specific travel and tourism jobs that are in demand for 22 and 23 are waiters and waitresses, cooks, chefs, bakers, pastry cooks, and some senior management. So you can see a quick recap here. We talk about where there are low barriers to entry, so it's easy to get into the market for anyone. Suppliers and buyers have strong positions, intense rivalry among competitors, so there are lots of competition, and a strong threat from substitute products often leads to an unattractive or low barrier to entry industry. On the other hand, we have high barriers to entry. Suppliers and buyers have weak positions, so you as an organization have a strong position. There's weak rivalry among competitors, and a few threats from substitutes often indicate what we call an attractive industry or high profit potential industry.